Hi, I'm Tom Zimmerman from EMDR's Third Weekend. This is an interview with Celeste Eckman Himanek, who will be talking about flash approaches with children. So thank you for joining, and thanks, Celeste, for joining as well.
All right. Well, welcome.
Thank
Right.
you.
And we're here to talk about flash approaches with children.
Yes.
Um, so I guess top line is this is something you do with kids.
It is something I do with
It
kids.
is. Tell
And
tell us a little bit about that more broadly, and I'm sure we can talk about, different ways you found to work, but what is that like on the kind of broadest?
on the broadest spectrum, I try to bring as much fun as is possible to therapy. I think that I don't think we should just save the fun for kids. So I use what I've got for adults too. I am not some great artist, but I love bringing art into it. I think there's so much that can't be expressed with words. And I think that's where there's so much beauty in EMDR because you can either speak or not. You can talk as much as you want. We'll try to close it down a little bit, or as little as you want. And what I think Flash is super helpful for is, especially with kids, it can be really hard for them to articulate things, and they don't have to. And that's the beauty of it to me, especially in working with kids, because a lot of times they just don't have words for things. So this
Yeah.
can really turn it around, and you see it in the affect. It's like, oh, there it is, right?
Right.
So yeah.
Excellent. And really, I mean, who would have thought that trauma work could be fun or that trauma work could involve fun? And related to fun, I mean, who doesn't have kid parts, right? So we want therapy,
Exactly.
we want therapy to address the
Exactly.
whole person and not just the most adult, studious, book reading parts of you.
I know. And, I've got some visual aids here, that I'll inflict
Mhm.
on you.
No, love
But
it.
I'm always looking at ways to make it less ponderous, that it doesn't have to be so heavy. And trying to get that message across that working on your trauma doesn't have to be traumatic, right? Just the concept that what is bothering me is so ugly that even the working on it, it has to be ugly. And it's like, no, it really doesn't. We
Yeah.
got this cool stuff that can make it easier. And that's the part that I think is just so important. And the beauty of working with children is that they don't come encumbered by all those expectations or even all that dread or all the disbelief. And, a lot of times with adults, what we're doing is we're selling the concept that this can work. With
Right.
kids, you don't have to do that. And I think that's what really makes it
Yeah.
so much nicer.
Right. And really, I think a lot of times, even with adults, part of the selling is to just be present with this, right? And kids kind of
Yes.
live in this eternal present. They kind of live
Yes.
in this eternal, where's my calm scene? Where's the next salient thing? What are we gonna, what are we gonna do next? So um in talking with other therapists that work a lot with kids, they say that it's often surprising how quickly in flash approaches kids may be able to process things. Are you finding that as well?
Yes, I do. And I find that both in EMDR and in Flash.
Yeah.
And I work with kids. I also work with families. And so, and using Flash in a family group is amazing.
Oh, excellent.
Yeah, and using it
Mhm.
in with couples in even um, those stinging argument leftovers clears it up. There's so many ways to use it, and it's just such a beautiful thing.
Mhm. So maybe talk a little bit about that, working with systems, right? Working with more than one nervous system using Flash. What does that look like?
Yeah. So I work for an agency here in Southern Oregon that's absolutely wonderful. So I work with a lot of families through that. I also have my private practice. And we were working with a very large family that has a lot of trauma history. And, talking to the parents first always and saying, hey, I got this thing, right? Do you want to try this? And having had their own positive experience with the EMDR was very helpful. And so doing some of this work with Flash in a group with all of them, so I've got 9 of them. It's like, holy cow, here we go, right? And what was really the point of that was kind of trying to help smooth down some of that relational heatedness and coming up with that positive focus that was a shared family experience, like the best trip they ever took together. And so all of them could key into that. See, and I just got this wash of like great goosebumps because it was so cool that they were all engaged with that and all talking about what part of that was the most beautiful for you and what was most fun, and just doing Flash. And yeah, it smoothed things out. It just helps.
Right.
Yeah, it was really, really cool.
And sometimes, I mean, so is the kind of thinking in that context kind of using Flash as a kind of first aid intervention? Let's like just kind of stop the bleeding, turn some heat down on this while we're strengthening points of connection at the same time.
Yes.
Yeah. Good.
And I think what is so beautiful about it is it's a first, it's a last, it's a middle, it's a whenever you need to pull it out of your pocket.
Yeah.
I use it to close sessions with, just to make sure we're leaving on a nice positive note. And it was really interesting because I originally got trained in EMDR back in 2013. And my first experience with being trained wasn't so great, and ended up feeling like, holy cow, now I have this time bomb and I better be really careful with this. So it was quite a while before I used it. And I had a gentleman show up in my office that his stuff was just so ugly that I felt like if I didn't try this, I wasn't being ethical. So it's like, I got this thing, and, his daily, colorful, vivid trauma experience got cleared out in about an hour and 15 minutes. Yeah. And then I'm like, woo. Now I'm in, right? Yeah. And so what was cool is when I went back to get, fully trained, because that was back when we were doing like 2 weekends. Mm-hmm. When I went back, now you had to start over. And I'm like, that's fine. So I trained with Phil Manfield. Yeah. And that was when they were just coming out with Flash. It hadn't even been published yet. And so in the training, he's starting, he's showing you what they're doing with Flash. Mm-hmm. And so that was really exciting. And just seeing the evolution of how you can use this and what can you do with it. And the way Ricky's using it, the way you're using it, everybody's got a little twist on it. Mm-hmm. And I think that's what's so beautiful about it, is how handy it is. And right. It's just such a beautiful tool in so many different ways.
Yeah, it is remarkable how many different ways you can use it, and it will mostly work. Right? It's almost like almost like this tool that even if you use it in a way that may not be ideal or may not even work all that well, clients are likely to tell you that was, that actually helped me, even if it doesn't in the end, you're not using it so well that it's fully resolving their trauma. So,
because if we're carrying the thought that what we're trying to do is make it better. Yeah. Right. And realizing that every time someone walks out of your office, it's not going to be perfect.
Right.
But is it better? And are you, first of all, are you walking out of the door in a good way that you can continue on in the world?
Yeah.
But one of the kiddos I'm working with, he had something really bad happen at school a couple of weeks ago. And when he came in, he did not want to talk about it. And his suds were like at a 9. And we did some Flash. And when he left, he's saying he's at like a 7.
Yeah.
So is that better than when he came in? Yes. Mm-hmm. Did we clear up everything and resolve it beautifully? No. Was he able to get some relief without having to talk about it?
Yeah.
without having to go over all of that, because he carries a lot of shame attached to some of his behaviors. It's like, we don't have to do that, so taking that down and doing some resourcing with, his one of his guys is Dr. Strange, right? And how we can put our foot in the past, we can touch on that, we can take it out, we can come back and be okay, right?
Yeah.
So,
And I really think one of the kind of core trauma informed principles should be not to make the perfect the enemy of the good. And a
it's
lot
a
of
beautiful
times,
way to put it.
yeah, I mean, good is good, right?
Right.
Good is good. And, I know the way the way a lot of us were trained is this idea that, there's one way to do things. You have to do this way. And if you don't do this way, bad things will happen. And you have to this and you have to that.
Right.
And a lot of times we're not working with perfect people. We're not working with
No.
perfect nervous systems. There's no part of this that is perfect. So yeah, better is better.
Better
Better
is
is
better.
better.
I
Less
have
burdened is
one of
less
my
burdened.
colleagues says it's gooder.
Yeah.
Sometimes gooder can be really good.
Yeah.
And also, I really think as therapists, it's part of our responsibilities to teach clients how to do these things for themselves too.
Yeah.
And there's so much caution around, be careful and don't activate people and keep them calm. And it's also like these people are navigating the world without us. They need to be able to carry these tools in their pocket, not just in ours.
Exactly.
Right? I don't want you to need me.
Yeah.
Right?
And that's lovely. And it's part of what I've been saying for a long time is that really in trauma work, one of the worst things that can happen isn't that a client's going to go home and try Flash on a particular memory, or do something that we've taught them how to do in session. One of the worst things that can happen is they go home and do the kinds of things they've been doing all of their lives. They start ruminating. They try to figure it out, or they, try to,
right.
numb from it, using.
Right.
So it's, people have been trying to make sense of their stuff forever. I'm glad that you're seeing some advantage in actually giving people effective tools that they may be able to use. And what about that? I mean, could you see that even in the context of a family where different family members are triggering each other, where all of them might eventually be able to do this, be healthy enough to do this and process the things they're going through in the present? So that it's not, it's not Mount Vesuvius in session, they're coming to session.
Exactly, where they think this is the only place they can work on things.
Right.
Right. And so those tools, a lot with balls, a lot with bilateral stimulation.
Yeah.
And so, yes, it's beautiful with Flash. We don't need that. But what I find is that it brings a lot of fun to it, especially the way that we do it. And kiddos with tennis balls, you can use this, right? Having those concrete things to put in their hands is awesome.
Yeah.
And even when we're just talking about stuff, we're throwing balls back and forth all the time. Got to be right to left. Come on, toss it to me, cross body. So, I got them all the time.
Yeah.
I got one kid that loves throwing my yoga ball in the office. It's like, okay, let's try not to take out the stuff on the walls, but we're good. Right. And being able to, I've got one girl that got permission from her school to take her tennis balls and use them in class.
Yeah.
Because this is how you get through the world, right? We got to use tools. Yeah. And what's beautiful about EMDR and Flash is that then you get to where you don't have to use them as much, but they're there when you need it. And, that's my goal ultimately, for you not to need me. Right.
Excellent. So maybe a little bit more about the kind of things that you have in your office, right? So if we were a fly on the wall watching a Flash session, you mentioned the kind of balls going back and forth, and there's a lot about kind of that helping to regulate, helping to co-regulate, helping to be present, helping to attune. Um, what
Right.
other kinds of things are you doing? What other kind of props? What other kinds of calm scenes or and
Okay.
processes
So
do you
I
have going
got
on?
some. Right. So calm scenes, I love the things that kids come up with. One of one kid's got a spaceship. That's his calm scene. Had another girl, hers was a tree house. Lots of things with nature. Those are the two that stick out the most. The spaceship and the treehouse are pretty cool. And one came up with the word, and I always ask them, what do you want to call it?
Mhm.
And one girl came up with my cozy place. So
Okay.
I'm like, can I use that? You know, and Rachel Walker also has some very beautiful images that she uses. I've got stacks of that over there too. But it's that we're and enhancing that. What do you want to bring to that? You know, and that whole guided imagery
Yeah.
aspect of diving into it so that when you want it, there it is. There's another one of your tools. Love doing superhero stuff with kids and adults.
Right.
So Doctor Strange is amazing. Um, Another one is Batman. Had an adult come up with Poison Ivy.
Okay.
Don't know if you're familiar with her. I had to look her up. You know,
Right.
she's beautiful. She can be very charming, but she's got a bad streak. So that person acknowledges, you know, I kind of do some stuff I shouldn't,
Yeah.
but I've got her in my pocket. But other things that I use is yes, the balls. And as far as containers go, I end up being a traveling therapist because I'm going to clients' homes too. So I've got my rolling bag I got from Harbor Freight. You
Right.
know, I got a contractor's bag full of stuff. I've got wands. My traveling container is this one. It's just clear. I keep my interactive cards in there so they can kind of see what's in there, and then I take it out. We
Hmm.
put that in. And then when we're putting it in, sometimes at first we're using the magic wand to tap and make sure it's secure, right? So
Awesome.
that's kind of fun. I have wands kids can pick from. Another one that's fun are boom whackers.
Hmm.
So I've got about 9 of these. I'm not going to show you all of them, but
Yeah.
they're like this,
Okay.
and they make different tones. And
Okay.
so the notes are marked on them, and I let kids pick the ones they like. And so while they're doing,
Hmm.
you know, that bilateral, they compound with these,
Hmm.
and it can really feel good to do that.
Okay.
Especially I've got a kiddo all through the summer. We were meeting in a park, and he could really thump on the picnic table with these, and it feels good to do that. I don't have to be quiet. I don't have to, you know, contain myself, and it can really be useful because you can feel that in your body,
Right.
right? And it helps them
Hmm.
tune into that kind of stuff. And then with some of the olders, I've got a Celtic badran, right? And
Right.
so this feels like a treasure to them. It's heavy, it's solid, it's also contoured, so they can rest it on their legs. They can put their arms around it. It feels very comforting. And then let's put some noise in it, right? And they can change
Hmm.
where they hit it. They can change what it does. And then they're also feeling the vibration of that
Right.
when they're latching into that. And it just can be a beautiful thing. And I love watching their faces. It's just like, wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
I can make noise and it reverberates. Because even when I'm talking to kids and adults about what is that trauma like and what is it like when you're carrying that in your body, and then when you talk about frequency and the vibration of something, I bring up, and I keep telling myself I got to order them, but tuning forks,
Yeah.
right? And how you can hit one, don't have to touch the others, and those will vibrate. And that's what trauma's like. So when that one thing hits you, what you're carrying vibrates at that same frequency of that trauma that you've got. And it's
Hmm.
like, oh, right? So that's what that's like. It's not, and very much getting across that message it's not that something's wrong with you, right? And I'm so glad that Oprah and Dr. Perry came out with It's What Happened to You, but I was saying that a long time ago. You probably would too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's what happened.
Excellent.
So, yeah.
Good. Anything else about working, particularly with flash approaches with kids that you would want to share with other child therapists that may be helpful, that may be
Yeah.
things you've learned that you had was a learning lesson, and you're like, oh, now I do it this way because this way
Right.
was a goose chase.
Because it's a little different. What I've found is that in some of the work, it's all about come up with a positive focus. I find that can really be a burden for people. It can be hard for kids. It can be hard for adults, especially when you're working on something that's hard. And now you're asking them to come up with something positive. And to me, it seems like, why burden people with that? So I offer things up like a choice. And one of the things that I do a lot of, especially online, but in office also, is I bring up a music video. And my favorite go-to is Happy by Pharrell Williams. Another one is Can't Fight the Feeling with Justin Timberlake, because they're upbeat, they're quick, and there's lots of changing visuals all the time. And I think I've had one person I think she said she was allergic to Happy, right?
Right.
I'm like, that's cool. We'll find something else.
Yeah.
But I offer things up like it's a menu, right? And
Okay.
how do you like this? And when you go to a restaurant, you don't order everything, but what do you like? There's that piece. And what I also find, it can be really helpful in healing those relational wounds that happen in couples and families and even in between kids. And I had a couple come in that had been together for a long time. And unfortunately, he used a bad word in an argument with her, and I can't let go of it. I can't get over it. And having both of them work on that using Flash, and that sting is gone.
Good.
That ow is gone. And so fights between brothers and sisters, or the bullying at school, and always conveying that it doesn't mean that what happened to you is okay, but that what matters is how you feel. And that so many people have had their feelings invalidated, that we learn how to do that to ourselves too. And how you feel is driving the bus from the minute you wake up in the morning. And it determines whether you're going to put your feet on the floor or not. So your feelings matter. And so let's clear this up if we can, right? The most amazing one was when I was first starting to use it. And I had a little girl who was 4, and she had been in a car accident with her family. So all of her family was in the car at the time. And it wasn't a very serious accident. Nobody was injured, but it was very scary. And so afterwards, they all went to the hospital, and there was a lot of big stuff around it. And this little one ended up, every time she got in the car after that, she was vomiting. So it was hard for her. It was hard for everybody around her. And so she was referred to me by another therapist. And so doing the work with her and her mom through an interpreter. And kiddo was fluent, mom mostly, but not entirely. So the interpreter was able to cover all those fine points, and we could make sure we weren't missing anything. So that was great. Ended up inviting the older sister to come in, and started out with that beautiful stuff from Joan Lovett. And, that whole storytelling that she outlines in Small Wonders. And what a gracious, lovely woman she is, because I emailed her, is it okay to share this? And can I do that? She's like, yeah, absolutely. So I have my handouts with her name on it. But building that story, and we created a book that was purple and sparkly and all of those positive things, and pictures of them traveling around the world in the car. And it went well. and it was coming down. It wasn't happening as much. It was easier in the car. But there was still a piece that was stuck somewhere. And she's 4. And so there's that articulation piece. Mm-hmm. And that was also when I was just starting to learn about Flash. And I'm like, well, let's try this thing, right? And so her positive focus was these ducks that she saw on this walk with her mom in the morning, because she loved these baby ducks. And so it was all about the baby ducks. And as I'm explaining this to mom, and of course the interpreter is there, and I said, so if you got something you want to try, go for it. And so my focus is on, kids and mom, because I also feel like all of this work was for mom too. Right. And as we got through this, that last piece with Flash was what resolved whatever was hanging in there, because it had gotten really good. It was gooder. Right. Yeah. But it wasn't quite where we wanted to be. And that Flash cleared it up. But then what was remarkable was the next day, the interpreter calls me and she's like, Celeste, you are not going to believe this. And I'm like, yeah, I probably will, but go ahead. What is it? Right. And she told me about this horrible thing that she had learned about her dad after his death, and she's carrying it. And it was horrible, hard for her. And she goes, it cleared it up. And I'm like, yes, that was so cool. I mean, just that, the beauty of it is just it's so elegant, right?
It is. And it's even when even if it's first time someone's doing it, and even if they're there, doing, there to do another job, you know what I mean?
Right.
And even mom who's there, in the mom role, mom may be able to find, something, something in this. So,
and it's that piece of, if we could just smooth this stuff out, and then we're not passing it on.
Right. And what's kind of amazing is that in many other approaches, if there was something hanging on, we might have had to put our finger on it. And you probably still don't know in that 4-year-old what that little piece was that was hanging on, and you don't need to.
I don't need to.
We never had to surface it. It resolved. It is resolved as a function of doing this work. Right.
And that's what I tell people. It's your beautiful brain is doing this work.
Right.
I'm just helping. It's you that's doing this. And, sometimes I'll say, do you have it? Because you'll see people grasping for those words. And it's like, I don't need to know the words. Yeah. Just, do you have it? Give me a nod, and off we go. So, it's very, very beautiful.
Excellent. Anything else related to, I was going to say doing Flash with children, but one of the things that's come up is really doing Flash with systems, doing Flash in almost a group way, which is fascinating, because maybe that's how humans used to heal from their trauma. Maybe we used to heal,
didn't they?
In groups
around a campfire.
Right.
So, I went to, I remember, specialists in group work. And one of the conferences I went to, this man changed it for me forever in terms of calling it icebreakers. He goes, think about how hard that is. We're cracking people open and hitting them with a hammer. I'm like, okay, I'm never doing that again. But he said, think about how we used to gather. We used to gather around campfires. We used to gather in groups. And so now it's always warm-ups for me. Right. Let's do a warm-up. And just thinking about how people did do that, because they shared those stories around a campfire.
Right. And a lot of times what they were doing was probably fun.
Yes. They had music. They were doing stuff. They were probably doing some really interesting stuff, but right. And I think sometimes we're so afraid not to make somebody worse, or am I doing it right? And did I check off everything? I've been doing this for a while, and I know, because I used to be a counter, right? that I've got thousands of hours in on this. And you know what? I still use my worksheet with every single person. Could I do it without it? Probably, yeah. I know I can, but I like being able to say, you know what, I hit the bases. But does it mean that if I go off, that I'm not going to follow through?
Right.
I think one of the other things that's really, really important is this concept. I think, especially with newly trained EMDR therapists, is this this way of thinking about it of now we're going to do EMDR. Right. And it's like, we're going to do this to you. And I said, okay, so if you're using some DBT stuff or some CBT, do you introduce it like that? And now we're going to do this. And do I have your permission for that? And it's like, let's make this part of our conversation. And even those little pieces from the protocol, let that be part of your vocabulary. Let that be part of your dialogue all the time. So it doesn't feel like this clunky, hard transition.
Right. So it's all recovery. It's all recovery work. It's all every part of it. Good. Excellent. Thank you. Anything else? Anything else that may be helpful to share that you'd like to share with?
Just that thought that, because Flash started as the smoothing before EMDR.
Yeah.
And just it can be great to clean up the stuff that's not getting cleaned up either, when you can't put your finger on something.
Right. And that's something, I think that legacy is still out there a lot. That we use EMDR almost to clear up things that don't clear in Flash, but I'm much more likely to clear up something with Flash that doesn't clear up in EMDR.
Yeah.
Right. So you can use it either way.
It is. And it's about what feels right for this person at this time.
Right.
And do you need more of it? And that it can go back and forth.
Yeah.
And it really is about that attunement to your client and what feels like the best thing for them. And if you're dealing with somebody who's much more, we'll just say, I don't know, stodgy or rigid and likes following the rules, then am I going to bring out the boom whackers and play with them?
Right.
Probably not. It's like, oh, I'm going to see that crazy lady again. She's crazy. Right. No, it's recognizing, who am I in the room with? And how do I think this is going to be received?
Yeah.
Because it's all about, how can we be the most effective in the shortest amount of time?
Yeah.
And while still not making people feel like they're on a conveyor belt. Right.
Exactly.
Next. Right.
Good. And how do we work with the nervous system that we're working with? Right. Not like running everybody through the same machine.
No,
how do we?
No.
Yeah. Good.
And it's, because that's, to me, the beauty of it. Nobody's the same.
Right.
And what works for one won't work for another. That's what keeps this from ever being boring. Right. I'm not bored. How about you, Tom?
I am not. Every single thing that other people describe as a failure or didn't work is information. Every single thing is coming to you as a gift in the form of information. So figure out what that's telling you and find an accommodation, find a way to work now that you have this information. Because I don't know about you, but a lot of times it's when I don't have the information and the client doesn't we don't know what we're not dealing with. What I mean? So when things come, they're helping give you the GPS of your client.
Absolutely.
And we want to use that to develop a unique, customized, individual therapy.
Yeah.
Just
it's like a treasure hunt
for them. Absolutely.
That's the way I look at it too.
Yeah. Thank you so much for agreeing to come, to spending some time with us. And thank you for all the good stuff that you do in the world. So thanks a lot.
It's been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Do you offer consultation, or do you?
Yes.
How, if people wanted to reach you for consultation, how might they do that?
Sure, they can find me on my website, which is realizationscounselingcenter.com.
Okay.
They can find me there. I've got a phone number.
Okay, excellent.
Pretty easy to find.
I will put that. I'll put that in in the notes so that people can get in touch with you easily if they would like to. So
Great.
thank you.
Thanks, Tom.
Thank you for the information. Thank you for the time. It was lovely. And we'll talk soon.
Okay, sounds good.
All right.
Thanks so
Thank
much.
you. Take care. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.